Good morning. So, we'll be starting with a new topic, that is population geography. And human geography, if you talk about, as we have seen, human geography is all about the study of human beings. And when it comes to humans, we find that study of population essentially becomes very important part of human geography. However, we will see that the development of population geography or official recognition of population geography as a discipline, as a sub-discipline within geography or a branch within geography, it was not done till 1950s. It was only in 1950s, early 1950s, it was Glenn Trevartha who gave a very convincing presidential address to the Association of American Geographers and stressed for the study of population geography within the domain of human geography. Since then, we can see the beginning of population geography as a part or as a recognized branch of human geography. But अगर हम देखें actually, तो we will be finding that population studies are not very new. Population studies have taken place even in past past period. Okay, like for example, if I have to put a date for this beginning of the study of population studies, I would call it as 1798. Okay, it was 1798 when a very important economist put forward his ideas on population, and his name was Thomas Robert Malthus. So it was Malthus who first initiated the debate about the population. In fact, population and resources relationship. He stressed this idea that we need to know about or we need to understand the population growth. He was of the view that population growth was much faster compared to how the resources are growing. And thus, what will happen? There will be a future which will be very bleak. Because ultimately, if you look into per capita resources available, there will be scarcity of resources and then there will be a population crisis. Okay, so it was 1798. Okay, 1798 is the date we are talking about. मेरा ये क्वेश्चन है तुम लोगों से, वाई सो मच लेट? अगर हम देखें तो ह्यूमन का जो हिस्ट्री है, सिविलाइजेशन ऑफ द ह्यूमन बींग्स, इट डेट्स बैक वे बैक, बहुत पुराना है, थाउजेंड्स ऑफ ईयर्स. ठीक है, बट वाई ओनली इन मॉडर्न पीरियड वी बिगैन टू टॉक अबाउट द पॉपुलेशन, द डेमोग्राफी? क्या रीजन हो सकता है? आई विल गिव यू 1 minute. Think and brainstorm, and we'll talk about it. कॉपी में ब्रेनस्टॉर्म करो यार. क्या रीजन हो सकता है? पॉपुलेशन डेंसिटी वॉज ओके.
पहले रिसोर्सेज ज्यादा रहे होंगे तो भीड़ नहीं पड़ी होगी उनको एफिशिएंटली मैनेज करने
डू यू रियली थिंक कि पहले रिसोर्सेज ज़्यादा रहे होंगे
की.
कंपेयर टू पॉपुलेशन? ओके. अगर हम देखें व्हाट यू आर सेइंग, ही सेइंग कि विद टाइम द नीड फॉर पॉपुलेशन वुड हैव इंक्रीज, सोशो इकोनॉमिक कॉजेस. बट डोंट यू थिंक कि पहले के अगर सोसाइटी में अगर हम देखें तो द प्राइमरी रिसोर्स दैट पीपल हैड वाज पॉपुलेशन, ह्यूमन बींग्स. टेक्नोलॉजी वाज नॉट सो मच डेवलप्ड. आज की डेट में इफ यू टॉक अबाउट विद द एडवेंट ऑफ एआई, डू यू रियली थिंक कि कुछ साल के बाद देयर विल बी नीड फॉर ह्यूमंस? प्राइमरी रीजन इफ यू लुक इनटू, हम बाद में भी देखेंगे, वी विल डिस्कस अबाउट फर्टिलिटी. वी विल सी दैट फॉर much of the human history, we'll see mortality and fertility we'll talk about, and we'll see that for much of the human history mortality levels were at very high. ठीक है, they were at very high level. अगर हम बात करें तो डेथ रेट यूज टू बी 35 per thousand and even above it, and as a result people had to also ensure that fertility was also very high. Overall, what was the case? The population growth was very sluggish. In simple terms, what we are trying to say is there were just very few people in the world. And since there were very few people in the world, when it comes to the population and resource relationship, the per capita available of the resources, it was not a very big issue. For example, आज की डेट में अगर हम देखें, if we suppose decide कि every person should have a availability of a house, land is a basic resource. ठीक है, can I say in a way it will be difficult, particularly when you talk about fertile land. In the past, however, if you look into it, was not a very big deal because there were much lesser number of people. As you can understand, this is the, can you see here? This is the population growth of the world. And if you look into the first time, can you see the population began to grow at comparatively faster pace? Can you see it is around 1800? This is the time period which we are talking about, 1798, when Malthus, a visionary scholar, who presented his ideas on population. So he could foresee that ultimately there were certain consequences emerging, due to which what will be taking place, the population will be growing at faster rate. After, you can see that somewhere between the First and the Second World War, you will be finding that from here there has been exponential growth in population which has occurred, because now ultimately the growth trajectory in the developing countries also started. The demographic transition in the developing countries also started. Okay? So this is what we are saying. This is the reason population geography, even population studies, if you talk about, they are more new field compared to if you talk about other disciplines, other branches, other subjects. Because if you talk about, it is a more recent phenomena. बाद में देखेंगे Population studies, if you talk about, and even population geography, it is a very ever growing field. It is growing very fast. Like for example, few decades back, we used to talk about that ultimately the developing countries have problem of population. And what was the problem of population? There was exponential growth. There was population explosion taking place in the developing countries. For example, if you look into India and China, in 1980s, China came up with one child policy to ultimately manage the population growth. But can I say just a few decades later, we find that China is facing another kind of problem. You might have heard about that China has relaxed its one child policy now, and it is now actively taking several measures to promote population growth. It has adopted pro-natal policies. So what has essentially happened? There is lots of change which has taken place. So the field of population and population geography is ever changing. It is very fast changing. Developed countries, if you talk about, they began to, this was the period, then they began to feel that there is going to be a population crisis. Before this, अभी हमने क्यों बात किया कि 1951 में we said, in fact it was 1951 when it was Trivartha who gave the presidential address and initiated population geography as a branch. उससे पहले not much was talked, even in developed countries if you look into, not much was talked about population. We will see, because they ultimately followed the Malthusian principle, and through that Malthusian principles of population policy, they used to manage. Their economic policy in itself was a population policy, and it was able to sufficiently manage the population. But in the interwar period, they ultimately saw there was a crisis emerging, and this crisis was a different type of crisis. Crisis which had not been predicted by Malthus. In fact, it was a very opposite kind of crisis than had been predicted by Malthus. And this crisis was a fertility crisis. They could see that their fertilities was declining at very slow rate, it was declining at very fast rate. And this, they could see that it was going to become a problem. So it was these countries, some of the developed countries, we'll talk about some pioneer countries like Italy, Germany, and Norway, and some other countries who started the first time the pro-natal policies. So it was the first time, if you look into, officially certain countries adopted population policies which were pro-natal. So what we are trying to say, population geography, if you talk about it, is a very ever-growing field of study, and lots of development keep on taking place. And these developments, if you look into, they are also reflected in the questions which UPSC asks in the examination. For example, just few years back, UPSC asked one question, the relationship or how there was similarity between the demographic patterns of Japan with some other or European countries. Okay, so again, there was demographic similarity between Japan and some European countries. So why there is demographic similarity? Again, you have to understand that there is a fifth stage of demographic transition which we are today talking about. Originally, when the demographic transition was formulated, there was only there were 3 stages conceived. Then there was 4 stages conceived, and today, if you talk about, we are talking about a 5th stage of demographic transition. And some of the countries of the world, including Japan and some European countries, they are facing this problem. And in 5th stage, essentially what happens, there is decline in the population taking place. There is negative growth of population occurring. So again, it was in news and was asked. Okay. So this is what I'm trying to say. Population geography is a very dynamic field, and it keeps on expanding. That means whatever we will be discussing today, the syllabus and the domains of population geography, what you have to do, you have to be very vigilant. When you are reading your newspapers, magazines, current affairs here and there, you have to be quite vigilant and keep on knowing what are the population issues which today we are discussing in the world. Like for example, you can see that there is right now a crisis going on in Palestine. ठीक है, and again, if this crisis is going on, can I say it would essentially produce large number of refugees? And even more than refugees, there will be production of internally displaced persons. Internally displaced persons are the people who were unable to cross the border in certain crises. So can I say कि अगर एग्जाम में यूपीएससी साल मेंस जब नेक्स्ट मेंस होगा एंड इफ इट इज आस्किंग अबाउट द रिफ्यूजीज, और सपोज उससे भी एक बड़े कंसेप्ट पे अगर हम चले जाएं तो रिफ्यूजीज, आईडीपीज, इफ यू टॉक अबाउट, कैन आई से दे आर एग्जांपल्स ऑफ फोर्स्ड माइग्रेशन. ठीक है, तो अगर यूपीएससी फोर्स्ड माइग्रेशन पे क्वेश्चन पूछता है, वी शुड नॉट बी सरप्राइज, वी शुड बी वेरी वेल प्रिपेयर्ड, सो दैट कि अगर ये क्वेश्चन आता है तो उसको सीधा 6 मारना. ठीक है, टाइम भी सेव करना है, बिकॉज वी वर एसेंशियली प्रिपेयर्ड. ठीक है, कंपेयर टू अभी हम देखेंगे सिलेबस में, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल देयर आर 2 टॉपिक्स टुगेदर मेंशन्ड, पॉपुलेशन एंड सेटलमेंट ज्योग्राफी. कंपेयर टू सेटलमेंट ज्योग्राफी, पर्टिकुलरली अर्बन ज्योग्राफी, पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी के जो टॉपिक्स हैं उनको प्रिडिक्ट करना कंपैरेटिवली इजी है. अर्बन ज्योग्राफी में बहुत फास्ट, पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी से भी ज़्यादा फास्ट डेवलपमेंट होते हैं. एंड दे, इफ यू टॉक अबाउट यूपीएससी, आई डोंट नो हु इज मेकिंग द पेपर्स, मे बी सम person who has urban geography as his major field, and they are hell-bound on asking questions on urban geography which are very innovative, which are very difficult to answer. But population geography हमेशा क्या होगा, it will be our forte, it should be our forte. This is where we can be very well prepared and we can get very very good marks. ठीक है, we have talked about perspectives in human geography. पर्सपेक्टिव्स इन ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी ठीक है, किसी को समझ में आता है, किसी को समझ में नहीं आता. बट नाउ ऑन द मेन ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी दैट विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट, मोस्ट ऑफ यू विल एसेंशियली अंडरस्टैंड, बिकॉज नॉर्मल बातें हो रही हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, अगर हम बात करेंगे कि फर्टिलिटी, पहले के टाइम में फर्टिलिटी पैटर्न क्यों हाई हुआ करता था, तो मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल विल बी एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड वाई द फर्टिलिटी पैटर्न यूज टू बी हायर इन the older times. ठीक है, so that is basically if you talk about the case of population geography, and इसको, इस टॉपिक को हमें इसी सीरियसनेस के साथ पढ़ना है. ठीक है, and many times I have seen, why I am saying many times I have seen, because the topic is easy, students will not give adequate focus to this topic. ठीक है, and when I am telling about adequate focus, essentially they will neglect, in a way they will neglect the topic. They will think कि कर लेंगे, बट कर लेंगे और 60% मार्क्स स्कोर करना एग्जामिनेशन में, दोनों डिफरेंट बॉल गेम होते हैं. ठीक है, तो उसके लिए बेसिकली क्या करना होगा, यू हैव टू मेक श्योर दैट द थिंग्स आर मक्ड अप. पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी में एक प्रॉब्लम जो स्टूडेंट्स जनरली फेस करते हैं, एंड दिस इज अ काइंड ऑफ इनहिबिटिंग फैक्टर, एक फियर. ठीक है, एज अ स्टूडेंट मैंने भी इसको फेस किया है. ठीक है, एंड व्हाट इज दैट इनहिबिटिंग फैक्टर? पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी में वी हैव टू स्टडी लॉट्स ऑफ डाटा. ठीक है, रिलेटेड विद पॉपुलेशन. तो ये इट बिकम्स अ काइंड ऑफ इनहिबिटिंग फैक्टर. वी विल सी, उसको ट्राई करेंगे सिंप्लीफाई करने की. विल ट्राई टू सिंप्लीफाई इट. इनफैक्ट वी विल इनकॉर्पोरेट द लेटेस्ट population findings. For example, you might be aware National Family Health Survey 5 के डाटा भी आ गए हैं. अनफॉर्चुनेटली अभी सेंसस के डाटा नहीं आए, सेंसस हुआ ही नहीं, कंडक्ट ही नहीं हुआ. ठीक है, तो अगेन वी विल ट्राई टू अपडेट वॉट एवर इज देयर, बट देखेंगे कि कैसे इवन स्टैटिस्टिक्स कैन बी सिंप्लीफाइड. देयर आर वेज in which we can essentially understand the statistics. Some places we can even use the general patterns to write very very good answers. Okay, so that is basically the nature of population geography. So what we are going to do, सबसे पहले आज क्लास में थोड़ा सा हम population geography की हिस्ट्री के बारे में बात करते हैं, and then what we will do, then we will look into the syllabus analysis, and then we will talk about, on we'll start with the topics. ठीक है, so first thing we are going to talk about is the development of population geography. You might have seen, देखो, I always say that you have got two guides, objective guides which will never cheat you. यूपीएससी की जो फील्ड है, कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट्स की पर्टिकुलरली, it is full of cheaters, full of cheaters. There are people who are teaching who should not be actually teaching. And ज़्यादातर टीचर्स की एक प्रॉब्लम है कि सबका, देखो, सब लोग मेरी तरह नहीं होते जिसको पूरी ज्योग्राफी आती है। सबका कुछ एरिया स्ट्रांग है और बहुत सारे एरियाज वीक हैं। तो उनकी पूरी क्लासेस कहाँ पर रिवॉल्व करती हैं? ऑन दोज टॉपिक्स। ठीक है, हियर इट विल नॉट हैपन। सो दो ऑब्जेक्टिव गाइड्स हैं हमारे पास जो हमें कभी चीट नहीं करते। मैं भी कर सकता हूं, बट वो दो गाइड्स नहीं करेंगे। दे आर सिलेबस एंड द PYQs। ठीक है, अगर हम PYQs में जाएं तो देयर वाज अ क्वेश्चन आस्क्ड a few years back, and this question was, urban geography is nothing but city in area and city as area। ठीक है, ये क्वेश्चन पूछा गया। ठीक है, अब ये क्वेश्चन मेरे लिए एक गाइडिंग लाइट है। और वो कैसे गाइडिंग लाइट है? कैन आई से कि अगर वो पूछ सकते हैं अर्बन ज्योग्राफी एज अ डिसिप्लिन पे क्वेश्चन पूछा जा सकता है, विच इज नॉट एट ऑल मेंशन्ड इन द सिलेबस। Can I say they can also ask you a question on population geography as a discipline? ठीक है, so what we have to do, we have to be prepared about it. That is what we are going to first talk about, the development of population geography. ठीक है, so as we said, if you look into the population geography, it is comparatively new field of study which emerged only in 1950s. ठीक है, so लिख लो इसको। Population geography is comparatively a new field of study which only emerged in 1950s within geography. Within geography or human geography. Full stop. However, population studies date back to the end of 18th century, when in 1798 Thomas Robert Malthus first propounded the principles of population resource relationship. Full stop. Despite this, within the discipline of geography, there was not much development with respect to population geography. Change the paragraph. In fact, inclusion of humans as a formal study of geography or in geography started only towards the end of 19th century. towards the end of 19th century, when the foundations were laid for human geography by Frederick Ratzel in his book. What was the name of the book? Anthropogeography. In his book Anthropogeography. In 1891, Ratzel published the second volume of his Anthropogeography. This work was quite influential. This work was quite influential in attracting the attention of scholars. Attention of scholars to population and its various attributes. Change the paragraph. Later, his contemporary Alfred Hettner also stressed that the study of population was an integral part of human geography. Full stop. In his analysis of separate branches of human geography, he singled out population. And gave it equal prominence with other popular topics. Of that time. Full stop. He emphasized that geographers should not confine their studies to biological phenomena. But also look into the social qualities of population. Change the paragraph. So we have seen that there was Ratzel, and there was, although he came later, but in a way he was a contemporary of Ratzel. It was Alfred Hettner, who was another very influential geographer at the same time period. It was none other than Paul Vidal de Lablache. Okay. So we know that Vidal Lablache, if you talk about, he was a French geographer. So he also stressed on the study of population. So change the paragraph and write. At the same time in France, Vidal de la Blache developed a new geography based on possibilism. Based on possibilism. Full stop. His exemplar book Principes de Geography Human. That means in English it is Principles of Human Geography. Principes de Geography Human, comma, which was published posthumously in 1921. Comma, stressed on the study of population. On the study of population. Full stop. In fact, 1/3 of the book was about the study of population. Change the paragraph. So we have seen one of his very important disciples was Jean Brunès. So another very important scholar who has stressed on the study of population geography has been Jean Brunès. So change the paragraph and write. The ideas of Vidal were elaborated by his disciple Jean Brunès. Jean Brunès, full stop. In his book Human Geography, comma, Brunès gave a very high position to study of population on the Earth's surface. Full stop. He believed that two world maps were of chief importance. Two world maps were of chief importance in understanding of human geography. And what were these two world maps? A map of water, dash लगा करके लिखो, a map of water and a map of population. Full stop. However, he also believed that any description of population can only be made through spatial distribution of settlements. So what we are trying to say that the population geography as a sub branch, it was not very organized. There were talks of development of population or study of population, but nobody saw it as a subfield. as a separate field, where and nobody essentially defined what was the essentially scope of these population studies. The focus here during this period, if you look into, we have seen कि ये वाला जो period था geography में, ये कौन सा period था? Can we say that there was early modern? Early modern कब से कब तक था? 1859 to First World War. Then there was intermediate modern. And if you talk about intermediate modern period, it was the inter World War period. So what we are finding in this period, there were talks about study of population, but nobody defined what will be studied in population. In fact, one of the biggest problem during this period was the study of population was with respect to the culture, okay, and the cultural landscape. The main focus used to be the regions, the cultural landscape, rather than the population as a sub-discipline. Okay, rather than population as a systematic field of study. Okay, it was only in 1950s when actually it started, and we know that this period कौन सा था? It was late modern period. So एक इसका जो अभी तक लिखा है उसका एक conclusion लिखते हैं. Up to the intermediate modern period, that is the Second World War, population geography remained as a nascent field of study. Nascent field of study. Full stop. There were talks about the significance of study, about the significance of the study of population, comma, yet none of the geographers elaborated on the scope or themes to be studied in population. Full stop. In fact, comma, as Trivartha has pointed out, comma, their emphasis was so much on the cultural landscape, that population and population geography itself was by and large neglected. Okay, that is the case. Then in the late modern period, you can, if you want, you can even put a heading, Trivartha's case for population geography. त्रिवार्था gave, देखो इसमें त्रिवार्था gave a presidential address, before the Association of American Geographers, before the Association of American Geographers, on the occasion of its 49th annual meeting in 1953. So stop here. He put forward a forceful case for population geography. Population geography. Full stop. According to him, since geography is fundamentally anthropocentric, anthropocentric in nature, the number, densities and qualities of population provide the essential background to all geography. Full stop. He believed that population is the point of reference. Population is the point of reference from which all other elements are observed. All other elements are observed, and from which they all derive significance and meaning. Trivartha proposed a threefold subdivision of geographical science in place of the traditional twofold classification, giving high significance to population geography. So this is the Trivartha's triad of geographical elements. At the top is population. Here there is physical earth. Here there is the cultural earth. तो पहले geography को in fact even today we divide geography as physical and human geography. So he was of the view that population is so much important that we should treat it as separately as a branch. आगे लिखो. Siddhartha believed that the study of population is logically the single most important approach to geography. And the one in which regional concept has it regional concept has the broadest application. Full stop. Therefore, any neglect to the study of population will cause serious injury to geographical science. Full stop. Thus, Trivartha argued for focus on man, instead of concentrating on the cultural landscape alone. Full stop. This influential presidential address of Trivartha set the tone for official recognition of population geography as a sub branch of human geography. Okay. So that is how the development of population geography has taken place. And as with any other field of study in human geography, population geography has also been affected by the various approaches which have developed within geography. Okay. So for example, if you look into, we have seen that the period between 1950 से 1970 का जो period था, can I say this was the period when we find that there was influence of quantitative revolution in geography. So during this period, same thing happened with population geography. Population studies remain quite quantitative in nature. Okay. So here what happened, the population studies remained quantitative in nature. Then we know that there was a period between 1970 to, if you talk about 80s, late 80s, when several, if you talk about domains of study became important, but one important domain of study which became important was the structural Marxism. So during this period, there was critical theory developed and became part of population geography. It became part of population geography. Further later, if you talk about what has happened, there has been several subjective themes have also developed. And if you talk about these subjective themes, like for example, अगर मैं एक एग्जांपल दूं तो take the case of social capital, if you talk about, or other subjective themes like quality of life. ठीक है, such kind of themes have also been explored and have become part and parcel of population geography. So as geography has developed, the general development of geography has also affected the development of population geography. ठीक है, then you put a heading scope of population geography. Scope of population geography. ठीक है, तो व्हेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट पॉपुलेशन एंड ज्योग्राफी, यहां पर दो वर्ड्स हैं. सबसे पहले population and geography. So here population, the term population refers to what? It refers to the subject matter of study. ठीक है, and geography, if you talk about, is essentially the perspective with which it is going to be studied. And what is the perspective of geography? Can I say it is spatial perspective? ठीक है, सो इसको लिख लो. पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी कैन बी इंटरप्रेटेड as study of population in spatial perspective. In spatial perspective, first off, it implies the investigation into human covering of the earth and its various facets with reference to physical and cultural environment. Physical and cultural environment. Change the paragraph. Population geography is concerned with the geographic organization of population and how and why this matters to society. How and why this matters to society. Full stop. This often involves describing where populations are found, comma, how the size and composition of these populations are regulated by the demographic processes of fertility, mortality, and migration, comma, and what these patterns of population mean, and what these patterns of population mean for economic development, ecological change, economic development, comma, ecological change, and social issues, Change the paragraph. In population geography, the main concern revolves around the following three aspects of human population. The first aspect is size and distribution of population, including the distribution of rural urban population. Second, population dynamics. And what is population dynamics? Past and present trends in the growth and spatial distribution explained from the perspective of the components of population change. That is, there are three components of population change: mortality, fertility, and migration. That is mortality, fertility, and migration. Population composition and structure. They include a set of demographic characteristics. ब्रैकेट में लिखो, such as age, sex structure, comma, martial status, average age, martial status मतलब marriage, average age at marriage, etc. So it includes what we are saying. It includes a set of, पहला हमने बोला demographic characteristics. Second, if you talk about, is social characteristics. social characteristics such as, ब्रैकेट में लिख सकते हो, such as caste, racial ethnic, religious and linguistic composition of population, literacy and levels of education attainment, literacy and levels of education attainment, etc. Economic characteristics such as workforce participation, workforce structure, etc. Okay, so this traditionally, if you talk about population geography, has been dominated by these three major themes. As geography has developed, and you can understand since 1970s, geography has tended to become more applied. So this has also manifested in population geography studies. Okay? And thus in population geography, another major theme which has developed is the study of population problems and population policy. Okay? So लिख लो, since 1970s, geography has become increasingly an applied. Since 1970s, geography has become increasingly an applied discipline. Which has also affected the development in population geography. Thus, another major theme has emerged in population geography about the study of population problems and suggesting appropriate population policies. ठीक है? So that is basically what is the development and the domain of population geography. Why is census being delayed? मोदी जी से जाके पूछो. I am not the Prime Minister of India. When we read answers by you, those answers contain so many concepts which are interlinking to each other. ऐसा लगता है एक क्वेश्चन कंप्लीटली डिफरेंट है, उसे रटना पड़ेगा. मैंने पहले ही बताया, बिना रटे सिविल सर्विसेज में सिलेक्शन ही नहीं होगा. बट स्टिल इट इज ऑलवेज एक चीज याद रखना है कि आई हैव टू स्टार्ट फ्रॉम वेयर आई एम. ठीक है? अगर मुझे यहाँ पे पहुँचना है, ठीक है, और ये है तुम्हारा यूपीएससी में जो चीज़ें चाहिए, ठीक है, या फिर इसको मैं ऐसे बनाता हूँ, दिस इज द थिंग्स विच यू रिक्वायर इन यूपीएससी एंड यू आर कंपेयरिंग, यहाँ पे मैं हूँ, तो गड़बड़ होगी ना. आई हैव ट्राइड टू गिव यू वेरी आइडियल आंसर. जो मैंने खुद से लिख करके दिए हैं वो आइडियल आंसर्स हैं. इवन इफ यू आर एबल टू रेप्लिकेट 50% ऑफ दैट इन द एग्जामिनेशन, इट विल बी मोर देन एनफ. वैसा कोई नहीं लिख पाता. और अगर मेरी बात पे भरोसा नहीं हो तो अभी जो टेस्ट सीरीज चल रही है जिसमें देर आर पीपल हु हैव रिटन मेनी मेंस, दे आर राइटिंग, आना कभी मैं उनकी कॉपियां दिखाऊंगा, यू विल अंडरस्टैंड व्हाई आई एम सेइंग दिस, कि ऐसा कोई नहीं लिख पाता। ठीक है, तो इवन इफ यू आर एबल टू राइट अप टू सर्टेन लेवल, एक लेवल तक आप लिख लेते हो, इफ यू आर एबल टू डू इट इन द एग्जामिनेशन कंडीशंस, इट इज मोर देन एनफ। ठीक है, ये जो परफेक्शन वाला जो कीड़ा है वो जितनी जल्दी मर जाए उतना बेटर हो। ओके, सो दैट इज बेसिकली, आई होप यू हैव गॉट एन आइडिया अबाउट पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी का डेवलपमेंट। अब मेन पॉइंट पर आते हैं, पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी हम कैसे पढ़ने वाले हैं। हम बेसिकली पढ़ने वाले हैं दोनों पेपर को, पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी को मिक्स करके। ठीक है, तो दो पेपर में अगर हम देखें, फर्स्ट पेपर में जो पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी मेंशन्ड है दैट इज ग्रोथ एंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ वर्ल्ड पॉपुलेशन। अभी हमने देखा था, दिस इज वन ऑफ द मेन थीम्स of population geography. Did we also talk about several demographic attributes? Then there is causes and consequences of migration. Migration की भी हमने बात की थी अभी. Then there are certain concepts which we have to study, concepts like over, under and optimum population. एक syllabus में एक topic add हुआ था, population theories. This topic was not part of the syllabus before. This was added in 2008. ठीक है, इसके बाद से देखोगे कि इस टॉपिक पे एक क्वेश्चन पूछा गया है डायरेक्टली अगर हम बात करें तो, एंड दिस वाज अबाउट द सोशियो इकोनॉमिक थ्योरीज ऑफ पॉपुलेशन। एंड इफ आई रिमेंबर करेक्टली 2008 में ही पूछ लिया था व्हेन द सिलेबस चेंज्ड। सिंस देन यू विल बी फाइंडिंग कि कोई डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन ऐसे पॉपुलेशन थ्योरीज करके नहीं पूछा है। वन क्वेश्चन विच दे हैव आस्क्ड, आई थिंक इट वाज 2013 और समथिंग, अबाउट द पॉपुलेशन थ्योरीज रिगार्डिंग पॉपुलेशन कंट्रोल। ठीक है, सो एक और क्वेश्चन वी कैन से हैज कम, बट फॉर वेरी लॉन्ग पीरियड ऑफ टाइम देयर हैज बीन नो क्वेश्चन फ्रॉम दिस पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक ऑफ पॉपुलेशन थ्योरीज विच यू कैन एक्सपेक्ट कि आ सकता है। देन देयर आर, एज आई टोल्ड यू, पॉपुलेशन प्रॉब्लम्स एंड पॉलिसीज। क्लियरली देयर इज सोशल वेलबींग एंड क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ एंड पॉपुलेशन एज सोशल कैपिटल। दीज आर द टॉपिक्स ऑफ पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी ऑफ पेपर 1। पेपर 2 में अगर हम देखें तो there is again, the topic is not named as population geography but here it is named as cultural setting. ठीक है, अब इसमें there is population geography and cultural geography mix कर दिया सिलेबस के अंदर। आइडियली यूपीएससी को दोनों को अलग रखना चाहिए था, बिकॉज कल्चरल ज्योग्राफी इफ यू टॉक अबाउट इज अ सेपरेट थीम। ठीक है, इट इज अ सेपरेट ब्रांच, इट हैज बिकम टुडे। So here if you talk about historical perspectives of Indian society, racial, linguistic and ethnic diversities, religious minorities, major tribes, tribal areas and their problems, cultural regions, ये सारा जो है, this all this is basically what it is, cultural geography. ठीक है, अभी I'll come back to this cultural geography, but coming back to population, you can see that here also it talks about growth, distribution and density of population. ठीक है, पेपर 1 में डेमोग्राफिक एट्रीब्यूट्स लिखा हुआ है बट उसको डिफाइन नहीं किया। ठीक है, हियर दे हैव आल्सो डिफाइंड व्हाट यू हैव टू स्टडी एज अ पार्ट ऑफ डेमोग्राफिक एट्रीब्यूट्स। सो यू कैन सी डेमोग्राफिक एट्रीब्यूट्स में हमें क्या क्या पढ़ना है, सेक्स रेशियो, एज स्ट्रक्चर, लिटरेसी रेट, वर्कफोर्स, डिपेंडेंसी रेशियो, लॉन्गेविटी ऑफ पॉपुलेशन, ऑल दीज वी हैव टू स्टडी। देन पेपर 1 में देयर इज माइग्रेशन, कॉजेस एंड कंसिक्वेंसेज इज मेंशन्ड। Here they have mentioned migration patterns के बारे में ज़्यादा, inter-regional, intra-regional and international migration. Also the problems associated with it, with migration. That means in a way it is basically what? Paper 1 में जो mention है, consequences of population migration. And here again you will be finding population problems and policies. Also there is another डेमोग्राफिक एट्रीब्यूट जो एक अलग दे दिया है, ऑल्दो मुझे लगता है कि ये इसके साथ देना चाहिए, दैट इज बेसिकली हेल्थ इंडिकेटर्स। सो वेराइटी ऑफ हेल्थ इंडिकेटर्स, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड लाइक लाइफ एक्सपेक्टेंसी बेसिकली इज व्हाट, इट इज अ हेल्थ इंडिकेटर। देयर आर बेटर हेल्थ इंडिकेटर्स ऑल्सो, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल IMR, MMR, दे आर ऑल्सो हेल्थ इंडिकेटर्स। ठीक है, there are new health indicators which are there today, which are not only taking into account simply mortality, but also they take into account the problems that people face in their life related with other things like disability, disease. ठीक है, if you are not able to function properly, ठीक है, because of certain kind of disability or disease, can I say that will also should become part and parcel of the quality of life? So today there are other health indicators like daily disability adjusted life years. ठीक है, so all of these should be studied as a part of the health indicators. So that is the syllabus, how it is defined. You can very clearly see पेपर 1 और पेपर 2 के सिलेबस में बहुत सिमिलैरिटीज हैं, बिकॉज मोस्ट पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी के अभी हमने 3 थीम्स लिखी हैं, वही 3 थीम्स हमें यहाँ पर एसेंशियली पढ़नी है, 4 थीम्स हमने लिखी हैं. ठीक है, सो बेसिकली हमें पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी में क्या समझना है. We will be starting the population geography with essentially the theories and concepts. Theories and concepts. ठीक है, और अगर मैं बात करूं, certain theories are actually not mentioned in paper 1 in population geography. There are 3 theories which we have to study, 3 main theories which are separately mentioned. One is Malthusian theory, Marxian theory and demographic transition models. ठीक है, so these are the 3 theories which we have to study in more detail compared to the other theories of population geography. So that is first the theories and concept. In fact हम अभी देखते हैं पूरा population geography हमें समझना है. ठीक है, तो हमें 3 concepts को basically समझना पड़ेगा. And these concepts are over, under and optimum population. ठीक है, तो ये जो ओवर, अंडर एंड ऑप्टिमम पॉपुलेशन, बेसिकली यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड ओवर पॉपुलेशन का मतलब क्या होगा. कैन आई से कि ये जो टर्म्स हैं दे आर डिस्क्राइबिंग द रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन पॉपुलेशन एंड रिसोर्स. ठीक है, तो ओवर पॉपुलेशन का मतलब है कि देयर इज एक्स्ट्रा पॉपुलेशन विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू द अवेलेबल रिसोर्सेज. अंडर पॉपुलेशन वी विल सी इज अ सिचुएशन वेयर देयर इज लेस पॉपुलेशन टू यूटिलाइज द अवेलेबल रिसोर्सेज. एंड ऑप्टिमम पॉपुलेशन इज द लेवल ऑफ पॉपुलेशन in which there is the most efficient utilization of resources is taking place, which is also leading to the highest standard of living, best kind of social well-being, which can be essentially achieved. So such a situation is referred to as the optimum population. ठीक है, तो tell me, अगर हम बात करते हैं optimum population, can I say कि हर country का एक objective होगा, and this objective will be to achieve the condition of optimum population and also remain in that or continue in that condition of optimum population. ठीक है, you might have heard about the term replacement ratio of population of fertility. It is considered to be 2.1. ठीक है, most countries want their fertility to reach to this level and remain at that level, because ultimately the number of people who are there, we will see, if you remain at this level of fertility, the same amount of population will stabilize, ठीक है, at that same size over a period of time. ठीक है, but we know that there are problems. Even developed countries are facing this problem. Even developing countries have started to face this problem, that fertility is now going below this level. In fact, you know, we will see National Family Health Survey 5, it says that our fertility has declined below this level. ठीक है, that means in future, if you talk about what problems China is facing today, India is also going to face those problems of population aging. ठीक है, so this is the entire crux of population geography. So what we want to do, numerically we want to reach to the level of optimum population. ठीक है, तो optimum population हम देखेंगे, what is essentially optimum population? It is a situation where there is highest standard of living achieved. ठीक है, so it is the size of population where we find what? Highest standard of living is achieved. ठीक है, एंड सारा का सारा गेम इसी चीज को समझने में है इन द एंटायर पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी. ठीक है, तो पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी करता क्या है? हम किसी एरिया के पॉपुलेशन को पढ़ते हैं. ठीक है, ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ दैट पॉपुलेशन what we are essentially trying to understand, we are trying to understand this population resource relationship. Like for example, think, अगर हम बात करते हैं, सपोज हम बात करते हैं, एक चीज हम पढ़ते हैं पॉपुलेशन साइज. ठीक है, तो पॉपुलेशन साइज अपने आप में, कैन आई से इट डजंट मेक्स एनी सेंस. सपोज किसी कंट्री का पॉपुलेशन इफ यू टॉक अबाउट इज 10 million. ठीक है, and another country population if you talk about is 20 million. Can you tell me which one of these is overpopulated? We cannot know because there is no reference point of how much is the resource base. ठीक है, तो कैन आई से इसको समझने के लिए एक कंसेप्ट फॉर एग्जाम्पल हम हमेशा बात करते हैं पॉपुलेशन डेंसिटी. तो इसका मतलब जो पॉपुलेशन डेंसिटी का कंसेप्ट है, कैन आई से इट इज एसेंशियली टू अंडरस्टैंड द पॉपुलेशन रिसोर्स रेशियो. यस और नो? हियर द रिसोर्स इज टेकन एज लैंड. ठीक है, so that is basically we are talking about. So once we understand population density, population size, other things we also need to consider, like for example the growth rate of population. So this growth rate of population, will it determine the case of optimum population situation? Obviously yes. ठीक है, so that is what we need to understand. Then when there is any of these patterns, there will be a particular standard of living which will be found, and this standard of living will be reflected in several demographic attributes. Like for example, tell me, can I say कि जहां पर ओवर पॉपुलेशन होगा वहां पर कैन वी से कि कुछ पर्टिकुलर पैटर्न डेमोग्राफिक एट्रीब्यूट्स मिलेंगे? लाइक थिंक अबाउट दिस. इन सच सिचुएशंस ऑफ ओवर पॉपुलेशन will we be finding certain conditions like poverty and unemployment to be very common? And will it also be reflected in several demographic attributes either related with health or related with other social indicators जो अभी हमने लिखे थे, like for example literacy patterns, education levels, सब में reflect होगा. ठीक है, तो all these things we are studying basically to understand where we are in this population resource ratio. ठीक है, हम कहां पर हैं एग्जैक्टली. एंड देन वंस वी अंडरस्टैंड दिस, व्हाट वी डू, वी एसेंशियली देन ट्राई टू फाइंड सॉल्यूशंस. ठीक है, दैट इज द एंटायर स्कोप ऑफ पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल थिंक अबाउट दिस. अभी हमने देखा था सिलेबस में दो टॉपिक है हमारे, सोशल वेलबींग एंड क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ. ठीक है, अभी हमने देखा था कि पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी जैसे जैसे सब्जेक्टिविटी आई ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी के अंदर, लाइक ह्यूमनिज्म आया, एंड लेटर फर्दर सब्जेक्टिविटी लाइक इफ यू टॉक अबाउट द पोस्ट मॉडर्न अप्रोच एटसेट्रा केम. कैन आई से विद दैट द स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग इज ऑल्सो डिफाइंड मोर सब्जेक्टिवली. ठीक है, एंड दिस स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग, इसको मेजर करने का एक तरीका पहले हुआ करता था, it was per capita income. Then it graduated into human development index, and today what has happened, it has further graduated into more subjective concepts which not only take into account the material well-being but they also take into account the subjective well-being of the human beings. So that is basically what, that is the social well-being and the quality of life. ठीक है, so can we say कि social well-being and quality of life ये जो topic है, can we call it as an objective of any population policy to achieve the highest possible social well-being and quality of life for the entire population, for the maximum number of people as much as possible? ठीक है, तो ये टॉपिक बेसिकली क्या है, इट इज अ ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ द पॉलिसी। ठीक है, एक और यहां पर क्या, पॉपुलेशन है, सोशल कैपिटल है। ठीक है, सो देखेंगे सोशल कैपिटल क्या होता है। सोशल कैपिटल रेफर्स टू सम टोटल ऑफ ऑल द रिलेशनशिप्स दैट एग्जिस्ट इन अ सोसाइटी। ठीक है, जितने भी रिलेशनशिप्स हैं ह्यूमन, इंडिविजुअल ह्यूमंस के बीच में, ह्यूमन द्वारा क्रिएटेड इंस्टीट्यूशंस हैं उनके बीच में, सम टोटल ऑफ ऑल दीज रिलेशनशिप्स इज एसेंशियली व्हाट, इट इज अ सोशल कैपिटल। ठीक है, तो सोशल कैपिटल हम उसको क्यों बोल रहे हैं, कैपिटल क्या होता है, कैपिटल, व्हाट डू यू अंडरस्टैंड बाय कैपिटल। कैपिटल इज समथिंग, इकोनॉमिक्स में अगर हम देखें तो कैपिटल रेफर्स टू समथिंग इन विच वी इन्वेस्ट टुडे बट द बेनिफिट्स ऑफ विच वी विल reap in the future, that is something which is referred to as capital. ठीक है, so social capital क्या है, it is the relationships. So suppose if I am making a relationship with people today, ठीक है, I am investing my time, there is lots of investment efforts which are involved, and the benefit of that, it is possible it may not be immediate, but can I say it can have future benefits. ठीक है, so that is basically what social capital. In fact बाद में देखेंगे इकोनॉमिक्स में इट हैज बिकम अ वेरी डोमिनेंट थीम, सोशल कैपिटल। इनफैक्ट यू नो इस बार पेपर 4 में भी देयर वाज अ क्वेश्चन, एथिक्स के पेपर में देयर वाज अ क्वेश्चन ऑन सोशल कैपिटल। ठीक है, सो सोशल कैपिटल अगेन, अगर सपोज करो कि सोशल कैपिटल वेल डेवलप्ड है किसी सोसाइटी, देखेंगे कई तरह के सोशल कैपिटल्स होते हैं, लाइक देयर इज द बॉन्डिंग कैपिटल, देयर इज ब्रिजिंग कैपिटल। बॉन्डिंग कैपिटल एक किसी कम्युनिटी के बीच में जो लोग हैं, सपोज इंडिया में कास्ट कम्युनिटीज को ले लो, तो उनके बीच में जो रिलेशनशिप है दैट इज बेसिकली व्हाट बॉन्डिंग कैपिटल। देयर कैन बी ब्रिजिंग कैपिटल, ब्रिजिंग कैपिटल इज एसेंशियली व्हेन टू कम्युनिटीज, द रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन टू कम्युनिटीज, so bridging capital. So think about this, if we have strong social capital, does it means कि हम बहुत सारे ऑब्जेक्टिव्स को बेटर अचीव कर सकते हैं। लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल गवर्नमेंट की पॉलिसीज, लाइक अगर गवर्नमेंट चाहता है कि देयर शुड बी द नॉर्म ऑफ 2 चिल्ड्रन, ठीक है, इफ देयर इज मोर स्टैब्लिश्ड, मोर स्ट्रॉन्गर सोशल कैपिटल, कैन आई से दैट अचीविंग सच ऑब्जेक्टिव विल बिकम मोर इजियर। ठीक है, ऑब्वियसली यस। अगर ग्राम सभा को देखें फॉर एग्जाम्पल, ग्राम सभा क्या है, एक तरह का सोशल कैपिटल है लोगों के बीच में। ठीक है, तो अगेन दैट इज अ इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज्ड सोशल कैपिटल विच हैज बीन क्रिएटेड इन इंडिया। so social capital क्या है, population as a social capital, can I say it is a tool to achieve a particular end, and that end is basically what, it is this. तो जितने भी टॉपिक्स हैं सिलेबस में, these topics are basically centering around this concept of over, under and optimum population. In fact जो अभी हम theories की बात करेंगे, several type of theories हम देखेंगे, there are 2 type of theories, natural law theories and the socio-economic theories of population. ठीक है, so we will see ये theories basically क्या करने की कोशिश कर रही हैं, they are trying to explain the population patterns which are found in a particular place. They are trying to find out the reasons of those type of population patterns, and once you understand those population patterns, then what will happen, you can suggest a better model, ठीक है, better solutions. तो जितना भी पॉपुलेशन स्टडी है वो बेसिकली क्या करने की कोशिश कर रहा है, स्टेप 1 क्या है, स्टेप 1 इज अंडरस्टैंडिंग द गिवन पॉपुलेशन पैटर्न। ठीक है, देन स्टेप 2 व्हाट इट इज ट्राइंग टू डू, it is trying to understand on the basis of this problems of population, and then on the basis of this ultimately step 3 is the solutions or policies of पॉपुलेशन। ठीक है, तो पूरी पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी को हम इन 3 पार्ट्स में डिवाइड कर सकते हैं। ठीक है, So that is basically population geography. तो एक तरह से जब हम पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी बोल रहे हैं, वी आर मोर कंसर्न्ड विथ व्हाट डेमोग्राफी. ठीक है. एज आई टोल्ड यू, पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी में भी बहुत सारे डेवलपमेंट्स हुए हैं. वन डेवलपमेंट हैज बीन अर्लियर कल्चर एज अ पार्ट, इट यूज्ड टू बी स्टडीड एज अ पार्ट ऑफ पॉपुलेशन. But today what has happened, cultural geography has become a separate and independent branch in itself. ठीक है. और इसीलिए सिलेबस में अगर हम देखें तो एज आई टोल्ड यू कि पेपर 2 में देर इज सेपरेटली मेंशन्ड सर्टेन टॉपिक्स ऑफ कल्चरल ज्योग्राफी. तो ऑल दीज टॉपिक्स जो अभी हमने बात किया, लाइक अप टू कल्चरल रीजन्स, हिस्टोरिकल पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ इंडियन सोसाइटी एटसेट्रा. ठीक है. तो जब हम पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी कंप्लीट कर लेंगे, देन वी विल स्टार्ट विथ द कल्चरल ज्योग्राफी. ठीक है. एंड कल्चरल ज्योग्राफी में पेपर 1 में भी देर इज वन टॉपिक ऑफ कल्चरल ज्योग्राफी, and this is the topics of languages. It is not given as a part of population there. It is given in perspectives in human geography. So languages, religions, secularization, cultural regions of the world. These are the topics which are given in the syllabus in paper 1. So इसको और जो कल्चरल सेटिंग का कल्चरल ज्योग्राफी पार्ट है, दोनों को मिक्स करके we will be studying. Now we are going to start with the population geography. ठीक है. Which is essentially study of demography. Basic फंडा हमारा सिंपल रहेगा. We are going to treat geography as a science. And till now what we have understood about the nature of science. What is science? Science is a field of study which is based upon theories. ठीक है. तो हम यहाँ पर भी क्या करेंगे पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी में? First what we will do, we will study certain theories. And then once we have understood those theories, we will apply these theories with respect to the world, to understand world population patterns and India population patterns. In the entire population geography, this is going to be our approach. अगर हम इस अप्रोच को फॉलो करते हैं, ठीक है, then what happens, our need to mug up too much data in population geography also reduces. ठीक है. एज अ स्टूडेंट ये मेरे लिए एक बहुत डिफिकल्ट फील्ड थी जब मैं खुद प्रिपेयर करता था. पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी मेरा हमेशा एक इम्प्रेशन था कि पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी में बेसिकली बहुत सारा डाटा मगअप करना, और इसलिए मैं इसमें बहुत ज़्यादा आई वॉज नॉट वेरी गुड एंड आई हैड ऑलवेज अ काइंड ऑफ फियर. When I became a teacher, I started teaching, then I realized that it is not like so much factual kind of thing. You can use the theories and you can understand the patterns and certain macro data more than enough. उससे ज़्यादा डिटेल में जाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. ठीक है. ओके, सो स्टार्ट करते हैं. सबसे पहले मैं थोड़ा सा समझा देता हूँ. फर्स्ट थिंग विल बी स्टार्टिंग विद द पॉपुलेशन थ्योरीज. But उससे पहले just let us look into, we'll later also talk about these concepts also, but first let us look into these three concepts basically of over, under and optimum population. इनकी definition देख लेते हैं and then we'll move on to the theories. इनको बाद में हम separately भी करने वाले हैं this topic because it is mentioned in the syllabus, but as I told you it is the beginning point. ठीक है. So when we are talking about here, we are talking about the population and resource relationship. ठीक है. And this population resource relationship can be manifested, can show three patterns. One is the case of overpopulation. One is the case of underpopulation, and third, if you talk about, is the case of optimum population. So what is essentially overpopulation? Overpopulation is a scenario where the population growth is higher or it outpaces the growth of resources. ठीक है. So what is Overpopulation, it is a scenario. It is a scenario where the population growth outpaces the growth of resources. The growth of resources. Okay. So here population growth we are saying is higher than the resource growth. So this scenario is the scenario of overpopulation. There will be, if there exists a overpopulation in a society, what we will be finding? It will be manifested in number of ways. It will be manifested in several socio-economic parameters. It will manifest into, like for example, in conditions of overpopulation, there will be lots of poverty, unemployment, poor health conditions of the people. Okay, etc. So many such. That means what we are saying, it will be manifested in several population problems or socio-economic problems. So that condition is the condition of overpopulation. कौन सी countries of the world can be said to be in this situation of overpopulation? क्या बोला? Developing. Okay. नाम बताओ ना यार, ये कौन सा होता है कि डेवलपिंग? ओके. सोमालिया किसने बोला? मैं यही सुनना चाहता था. देखेंगे बाद में, इनफैक्ट अभी देखने जा रहे हैं कि सर्टेन कंट्रीज, इफ यू टॉक अबाउट, दे आर अंडर पॉपुलेटेड एंड डिस्पाइट दैट दे विल ऑल्सो फेस दिस सेम काइंड ऑफ problems. ठीक है. So this having this kind of problems, for example, it is not just indication that a country is overpopulated. Suppose मुझे क्लासीफाई करना है, अगर मैं मान लो इंडिया की ही बात करूं कि क्लासीफाई द इंडियन रीजन्स ऑफ इंडिया इनटू ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ पॉपुलेशन रिसोर्स रेशियो. ठीक है. कैसे क्लासीफाई करेंगे? सिंपल दो हम क्राइटेरिया लेके क्लासिफाई कर सकते हैं. ठीक है. सबसे फर्स्ट लेवल पे हम क्राइटेरिया लेंगे स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग. ठीक है. जिन कंट्रीज में स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग बेटर है या जिन रीजन्स में स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग इज बेटर, दे विल बी कॉल्ड एज हैविंग ऑप्टिमम पॉपुलेशन. बट दोज एरियाज और कंट्रीज वेयर द स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग इज पुअर, दे विल बी ईदर ओवर पॉपुलेटेड और अंडर पॉपुलेटेड. ठीक है. अब हम सेकंड क्राइटेरिया को यूज करके डिफाइन करेंगे विच इज ओवर पॉपुलेटेड एंड विच इज अंडर पॉपुलेटेड, एंड द सेकंड क्राइटेरिया विल बी पॉपुलेशन डेंसिटी. ठीक है. सो जिन कंट्रीज में पॉपुलेशन डेंसिटी हाई होगा, दोज कंट्रीज विल बी क्लासिफाइड एज ओवर पॉपुलेटेड. ठीक है. एंड द अदर्स विल बी क्लासिफाइड एज अंडर पॉपुलेटेड. ठीक है. तो I hope you understood what is overpopulation. Underpopulation को अगर हम define करें, what is underpopulation? So underpopulation is a scenario. लिख लो इसको, is a scenario where additions in population or increment in population will not lead to reduction in the standard of living. ठीक है. कहने का मतलब है कि ऑलरेडी एक स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग है, अगर हम उसमें और पीपल को ले आके ऐड कर दें, देन द स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग विल नॉट decline. That means there was enough resources, that means there is more resources to accommodate larger population. ठीक है, so in other words, there exists larger resource base. There exists larger resource base to accommodate larger size population. ठीक है, अब अंडर पॉपुलेशन में हमें दो सिनारियो दिखते हैं, दो तरह की कंडीशंस दिखाई पड़ती हैं. वन टाइप ऑफ अंडर पॉपुलेशन, इट इज फाउंड इन द डेवलपिंग एंड अंडर डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज में मिलता है. दैट मीन्स इट इज एसेंशियली फाउंड इन द थर्ड वर्ल्ड कंट्री. ठीक है, यू नो अबाउट फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड, सेकेंड वर्ल्ड, थर्ड वर्ल्ड. फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड कंट्रीज कौन सी हैं? दीज आर मेनली द डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज. ठीक है, लाइक वेस्टर्न यूरोपियन कंट्रीज, एंग्लो अमेरिका, ठीक है, जापान, इन अ वे सिंगापुर टुडे. So these are, they can be called as the first world countries. Second world countries कौन सी है? अगर पता नहीं था तो मुझसे किसी ने पूछा क्यों? When I use this word, first world, second world, third world, if you did not know, you should have asked. It is very simple here. Second world countries are all the countries which were part of Soviet Union. ठीक है, they are referred to as the second world. So you can understand these countries include the countries of Eastern Europe, Central Asia and Russia. So they are second world countries. Third world countries अगर हम बात करें तो rest of the countries are all third world countries. Third world countries are further divided into two types, developing and underdeveloped. ठीक है, तो अंडर पॉपुलेशन हमें दो कंडीशंस में मिलता है, डेवलपिंग, अंडर डेवलप्ड सिचुएशंस में मिलता है. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल, अगर मुझे इसका एग्जांपल देना है, मच ऑफ लैटिन अमेरिका इज बेसिकली व्हाट इट इज अंडर डेवलप्ड. ठीक है, so much of Latin America, in fact all of Latin America is underdeveloped. Sub Saharan Africa, if you talk about, it is essentially underdeveloped. तो लार्ज पार्ट हम देखेंगे जहां पर पॉवर्टी एग्जिस्ट करती है, प्रॉब्लम्स एग्जिस्ट करती हैं, वो एक्चुअली एरियाज कौन से हैं? दे आर अंडर डेवलप्ड एरियाज. ठीक है, इंडिया में भी फॉर एग्जाम्पल थिंक अबाउट एरियाज. ठीक है, एक केस है बिहार का, वी कैन कॉल इट एज ओवर पॉपुलेटेड. बट अदर अंडर डेवलप्ड स्टेट्स ऑफ इंडिया, कैन वी से दे इंक्लूड झारखंड, उड़ीसा. ठीक है, और अगर हम इन स्टेट्स की पॉपुलेशन डेंसिटी देखें, कैन आई से इट इज नॉट वेरी हाई. तो एक्चुअली दे आर एग्जाम्पल्स ऑफ व्हाट? दे आर एग्जाम्पल्स ऑफ अंडर पॉपुलेटेड. राजस्थान फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इट इज अंडर पॉपुलेटेड. ठीक है, ओवर पॉपुलेटेड वाले जो प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, जो कंट्रीज एक्चुअली कम एग्जिस्ट करती हैं, अंडर पॉपुलेशन वाली कंट्रीज जहां पर प्रॉब्लम्स हैं वो ज्यादा एग्जिस्ट करती हैं. ठीक है, तो देखेंगे कि बहुत सारी जो डिबेट आज की डेट में चल रही है, दैट देयर इज सो मच पॉपुलेशन इंक्रीज, वी हैव टू कंट्रोल पॉपुलेशन, दिस एंड दिस, ऑल ऑफ दिस इज बेसिकली व्हाट? इट इज बेसलेस. एक्चुअली द वर्ल्ड हैज इनफ रिसोर्सेज. तो बाद में देखेंगे, द प्रॉब्लम इज एक्चुअली नॉट अबाउट द अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ रिसोर्सेज, द प्रॉब्लम इज ऑल अबाउट द डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ रिसोर्सेज. ठीक है, तो वन केस इज द डेवलपिंग अंडर डेवलप्ड एंड सेकेंड केस इज द डेवलप्ड नेशंस. ठीक है, सो डेवलप्ड में कौन से आते हैं? फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड और सेकेंड वर्ल्ड आते हैं. तो इफ यू टॉक अबाउट डेवलप्ड, मेनली ये कौन से एरियाज हैं? दीज आर द areas which are, you can call it as Arctic and subarctic regions. ठीक है. So Arctic Canada, for example, take the case of Canada. There is very less population, there is lots of resources available, but there is not enough population to utilize all the resources. You can understand these days, if you look into past few decades, many of these countries, like for example, take the case of Russia. Is Russia inviting people from population from friendly countries to come and settle there? ठीक है. तो you can understand बहुत अच्छी opportunity है. You people can go. UPSC से better है. You can go and marry a Russian girl. There is better if you talk about sex ratio there. It is true. There are more women, and they'll also reward you for doing that. India is a friendly country to Russia. Many of the Indians are settling there. Okay, so Arctic and subarctic regions. Also, if you talk about some other countries, like take the case of Australia. ठीक है. So again, here what we find, there are situations of underpopulation. Although here what is happening, the symptoms are same. Here the symptoms are different. They are comparatively better developed. The standard of living found here is much better. But still they are what? They are underpopulated, as the available resource base can accommodate more population without any reduction in the standard of living. Okay, so that is the case of underpopulation. Optimum population, as I told you, it is what? It is a situation which of population resource ratio which leads to development of the highest possible standard of living. Highest possible standard of living to the highest possible number of people. To the highest possible number of people. Okay, so that is basically the case of optimum population. And as we said, optimum population कहाँ पर हमें मिलता है? It is particularly characteristic of the first world countries and some of the second world countries. Not all of the second world countries, some of the second world countries. एक और चीज बाद में देखेंगे कि ये जो कंसेप्ट, ये जो रिलेशनशिप जिसकी हम बात कर रहे हैं, कैन आई से दिस रिलेशनशिप इज हाईली डायनामिक? Yes or no? Can it change with time? Obviously, it can change with time. For example, अगर आज की डेट में हम कह रहे हैं कि इंडिया में सपोज देयर इज अ सिचुएशन ऑफ ओवर पॉपुलेशन दैट एग्जिस्ट, ठीक है, जैसे मोदी जी ने इतनी सारी टेक्नोलॉजीज का आविष्कार किया है, वैसे ही सपोज कोई आ जाता है और नैनो टेक्नोलॉजी का आविष्कार कर देता है. कैन यू अंडरस्टैंड? नैनो टेक्नोलॉजी is a very advanced technology which we are thinking, where we can produce any kind of resource by altering the nanostructures. ठीक है, at its highest level there will be no resource scarcity. तो can I say कि अगर हमारा resource base बढ़ गया, definition of overpopulation can suddenly change. ठीक है. So again, this relationship is very dynamic relationship, because बाद में देखेंगे कि the definition of resource is very dynamic. Resources are produced by the human beings. ठीक है. So this is the basic idea of the population resource relationship. अब इसी population resource relationship को समझने के लिए और समझाने के लिए there have been number of population theories given. ठीक है. Several population theories have been given to understand this population resource ratio. As I told you, the first study, the most important pioneer study, which can be called as the watershed In the population studies, it was given in 1798 by थॉमस रॉबर्ट माल्थस. ठीक है. ओवरऑल हम देखेंगे कि जो पॉपुलेशन थ्योरीज होती हैं, they are of two types. There are two type of population theories. One type of population theory is the natural law theories. Natural law theories. Then there are socio-economic थ्योरीज. ठीक है. तो नेचुरल लॉ थ्योरीज क्या कहते हैं? दे कैन ऑल्सो बी रेफर टू एज द डिटर्मिनिस्टिक थ्योरीज. ठीक है. या फिर एनवायरमेंटल deterministic theories. So what they believe, that there exists a natural law. These theories believe that there exists a natural law, which governs the population and population processes. Which govern the population and population processes. So that is basically what that is natural law theories. Number of theories can be called as belonging to this category. The first major theory which belongs to this category is the Malthusian theory of 1798. इसलिए मैं यहाँ पर स्पेसिफिकली 1798 लिख रहा हूँ बिकॉज माल्थस के आइडियाज लेटर ऑन in his later writings he became less deterministic, although he was fundamentally determinist, but he became less determinist. In his writing he started to stress less on certain inevitable things, and he started to talk about population policy which can be used to govern the population. ठीक है. So that is why his original essay of population which was written in 1798, that can be called as a natural law theory. He has tried to provide a natural law theory. ठीक है. Then there were several others, like we will see. One important theory is the थॉमस डबल डेज डाइट थ्योरी. इसको भी लिख लो, थॉमस डबल डेज डाइट थ्योरी. ठीक है. सो दैट इज बेसिकली ऑल्सो ही हैज ट्राइड टू प्रोवाइड अ नेचुरल लॉ थ्योरी. देन कास्ट्रो ने जो डबल डे ने जो बात बोली उसको उसका साइंटिफिक एक्सप्लेनेशन करने की कोशिश की जूस डे कास्ट्रो. तो जूस डेज कास्ट्रो प्रोटीन कंजम्पशन थ्योरी. ठीक है. देन इफ यू टॉक अबाउट अनदर इज माइकल थॉमस सैडलर्स डेस्टिनी थ्योरी. and Herbert Spencer's biological theory. Herbert Spencer's biological theory. फोर्थ कौन सा लिखा है हमने? Sadler's theory. ओके, तो ये 5 थ्योरीज हमें पढ़नी है एज अ नेचुरल लॉ थ्योरी. ठीक है. वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग दैट यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड हियर इज दैट ये थ्योरीज आज के टाइम में रिजेक्ट हो चुकी हैं. ठीक है. इसका मतलब है हम इसको पढ़ेंगे तो जस्ट बिकॉज इट इज मेंशन्ड इन द सिलेबस. व्हाई आई एम सेइंग कि जब भी मैंने कोई क्वेश्चन दिया एग्जाम में, टेस्ट में, लाइक आई हैव गिवन क्वेश्चंस लाइक ऑन सर्टेन पॉपुलेशन थ्योरी. ठीक है. जहां पर मैंने पॉपुलेशन थ्योरी को स्पेसिफाई नहीं किया. ठीक है. तो इफ इट द क्वेश्चन इज नॉट स्पेसिफाइड एंड इट इज सेइंग पॉपुलेशन थ्योरीज, लाइक एक क्वेश्चन था पॉपुलेशन कंट्रोल थ्योरीज. ठीक है. एंड इट इज नॉट स्पेसिफाइड, देयर इज अ लिमिटेड स्पेस इन विच यू हैव टू राइट. I will not write the theories which have been already rejected. एक तरह से उनको थ्योरी बोल भी नहीं सकते. Because if you remember, theory is something which is proved. ठीक है. Their ideas can be more regarded as hypothesis rather than a theory. So the only theory which I will be using from this category will be the Malthusian theory. ठीक है. Then if you talk about the socio-economic theories, in a way these theories can be referred to as the possibilistic. These are possibilistic theories. So socio-economic theories, लिखो इसको, socio-economic theories believe that population and its patterns vary with the given political economic settings. Full stop. Thus there cannot be a universal law. There cannot be a universal law determining population processes. Full stop. Each type of setting has its own population processes. So such theories can be referred to as more possibilistic theories. Number of theories हमें इसके अंदर पढ़नी है. One of the important theory which was given, it was Marxian theory of population. Marxian theory of population. So देखेंगे मार्क्स की जो थ्योरी है, it is applicable in only capitalistic settings. ठीक है. In market based economies में ही वो applicable है. And he identifies the problem of such population problems of such societies and he suggests कि कोई और तरीका नहीं है, इसको खत्म कर दो. You remove it through violent revolution and replace it with a communist society where such problems will not be there. Communist societies will always continue to be in the situation of optimum population. ठीक है. So that is basically what the Marxian theory of population. Then if you talk about, there are some other theories which are there, like for example there is the social capillarity theory. Of Arsene Dumont. So it belongs to the category of socio-economic theories. Then if you talk about, और भी थे, but actually there are ideas rather than theories which we will be studying later on. ठीक है. Like for example we'll talk about the John Stuart Mill's. ठीक है, we'll talk about the ideas of Durkheim. ठीक है, so if you talk about these, they are more ideas or observations rather than theory. Then if you talk about, there are others like Ricardo's economic theory. Ricardo's economic theory. ठीक है, फिर देखेंगे कि why we are studying Mills, Durkheim and others, many of these, because ultimately what they have done, all these have been combined today in another theory, which is the demographic transition theory. They have been combined together into a single theory, that is the demographic transition theory. Many of these ideas. ठीक है, तो ये दो कैटेगरी ऑफ थ्योरीज हैं. अब इसमें कुछ थ्योरीज ऐसी हैं, एक आध चीजें ऐसी हैं जो इधर रखें कि इधर रखें थोड़ा सा गड़बड़ है, इसलिए मैं इनको इधर बीच में रख देता हूं. लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल, वी विल ऑल्सो स्टडी अबाउट नियो माल्थूसियन. नियो माल्थूसियन, तो नियो माल्थूसियन देखेंगे. दे एग्री विथ माल्थस in a way कि population growth is always faster than the growth of the resources. ठीक है, but they still have some possibilistic orientation. In that they say कि we need to control population and they actively advocate use of contraceptives, which Malthus did not do. ठीक है, so एक तरह से वो natural law भी दे रहे हैं, but साथ में ये भी कह रहे हैं कि इसको change भी कर सकते हैं. So that is why we cannot keep them here or we cannot keep them here. They have to be kept here. ठीक है, so that is the population theories जो हमें पढ़ना है. हम start करेंगे with the Malthusian theory. We'll move on to Neo-Malthusian. We'll study Marxian theory. ठीक है, then हम बाकी की सारी theory पढ़ेंगे and we will end with ultimately the demographic transition theory, because this is the model that is of the theories that is today. ठीक है, डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन थ्योरी इज द कंटेम्पररी मॉडल ऑफ कंटेम्पररी अप्रोच. द मेन थ्योरी, जैसे हमने देखा है जियोमॉर्फोलॉजी में, टेक्टोनिक जियोमॉर्फोलॉजी के अंडर प्लेट टेक्टोनिक्स मेन थ्योरी है जो सारी चीज़ों को एक्सप्लेन करता है, चाहे वो अर्थक्वेक हो, चाहे वो वोल्केनिज्म हो. इसी तरह से पॉपुलेशन ज्योग्राफी, डेमोग्राफी में डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन थ्योरी इज द मेन थ्योरी विच एक्सप्लेन्स ऑल द पॉपुलेशन पैटर्न्स. लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल थिंक, अगर कोई कंट्री डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन की स्टेजेस में फॉरवर्ड है, आगे है, कैन आई से कि इन जनरल उस कंट्री में अगर हम देखें तो लिटरेसी रेट्स हाई होंगे, द कंट्री विल बी मोर डेवलप्ड. ठीक है, कंट्री विल हैव बेटर हेल्थ पैरामीटर्स. इफ यू टॉक अबाउट, कंट्री विल हैव लो फर्टिलिटी, लो मोर्टालिटी. ठीक है, सो अगेन एवरीथिंग कैन बी डिटरमाइंड. हम देखेंगे कि माइग्रेशन को भी डिटरमाइन कर सकते हैं, अर्बनाइजेशन को भी डिटरमाइन कर सकते हैं. एवरी डेमोग्राफिक पैटर्न कैन बी अंडरस्टूड फ्रॉम द पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन थ्योरी. ठीक है, सो दैट इज द पॉपुलेशन थ्योरी. सबसे पहले विल स्टार्ट विथ माल्थूसियन थ्योरी ऑफ पॉपुलेशन. So we will see Malthusian theory of population. In this we will be discussing about the context of the theory of population which was given by Malthus. Other things also we will be talking about. We will talk about the important assumptions on which the Malthusian population theory is made. ठीक है, अब इस assumptions में मैं जो हम लिखेंगे वो जो होगा वो declared, जो उसने थ्योरी में डिक्लेयर किया assumptions. But there are certain undeclared assumptions also in the mind of Malthus when he is making this theory. And we'll see that they are very important to understand his thinking and his theory. ठीक है, सो जब हम एग्जाम में लिखेंगे तो हम केवल कौन से एजम्पशन लिखेंगे, ये वाले. बट हमारे लिए हम और बात करेंगे ताकि हमें ज़्यादा बेटर समझ में आए. सम अनडिक्लेयर्ड एजम्पशन, दीज आर नॉट टू बी रिटन इन द एग्जामिनेशन. एनालिसिस करते समय भले ही बता दो, ठीक है, बट नॉट हियर. देन द propositions of theory. So we'll look into what the theory essentially says, and propositions of the theory में number of things Malthus talks about. One important thing Malthus talks about is the population subsistence relationship. He explains the relationship between population and subsistence. Second important thing he talks about essentially is he makes a certain future predictions of population growth. ठीक है, then he talks about the consequences of such future population growth, and then he also talks about the solutions of such population growth. ठीक है, तो देखेंगे कि consequences में he talks about the crisis which will essentially happen. And when he's talking about the solutions, वो कहता है हमारे हाथ में है ही नहीं. Everything depends upon nature. He is very deterministic in his approach. ठीक है, so he talks about essentially the solution. So that is the main propositions of the theory. Then essentially, no doubt, we'll talk about the critical analysis of the theory. आज के टाइम में एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट मॉडल्स एंड थ्योरीज पर्टिकुलरली जो टॉपिक है, उससे जो एग्जाम में क्वेश्चन पूछे जा रहे हैं, दे वन कैटेगरी ऑफ क्वेश्चंस व्हिच आर आस्क्ड आर रिलेटेड विद कंटेम्पररी यूटिलिटी. ठीक है, और कंटेम्पररी यूटिलिटी की जब हम बात करेंगे तब यहाँ पर हम एक और चीज़ की बात करेंगे अबाउट द लेटर writings of Malthus. Later writings of Malthus, particularly related with population policy. ठीक है, हम देखेंगे कि पूरा का पूरा जो फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड कंट्रीज का पॉपुलेशन पॉलिसी रहा है, इट हैज बीन बेस्ड अपॉन द आइडियाज ऑफ माल्थस. ठीक है, दे डिड नॉट अडॉप्ट एनी पॉपुलेशन पॉलिसी, एनी डिक्लेयर्ड पॉपुलेशन पॉलिसी, because Malthus was against any population policy. Malthus believed that the best way of managing the population was that your economic policy should be the population policy. ठीक है, your economic policy should be the fertility policy, and the best economic model to do so, to achieve a better population, a more optimum population, is definitely capitalistic mode of production. ठीक है, so देखेंगे what he has written in his later writings about capitalism and how it is a very suitable method. So that is basically what we are going to talk about. सबसे पहले हम बात करते हैं context. So it was, 1798 when Malthus wrote his essay on the principles of population. ये principles है, essay on the principles of population. ठीक है. So it was in 1798 he wrote the essay on principles of population. He was essentially a French scholar. Now very important thing was that अगर हम इस पीरियड को देखें तो ये क्या एंड ऑफ 18th सेंचुरी, ठीक है, एंड इट वाज अबाउट बिगिनिंग ऑफ 19th सेंचुरी. दिस इज द पीरियड व्हेन व्हाट वी फाइंड देयर वाज इंडस्ट्रियल revolution had started in Europe. Industrial revolution had started in Europe. ठीक है. अब इंडस्ट्रियल रिवोल्यूशन स्टार्ट हुआ तो कैन आई से विथ इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन देयर विल ऑल्सो बी द फिनोमिना ऑफ urbanization growth was simultaneously taking place. ठीक है, ये दोनों चीजें साथ में हो रही थी. अर्बनाइजेशन में सिटीज में कैन आई से city is a place where people live more near to each other. City is a place which is characterized by higher population density than other settlements. ठीक है. So what we have to understand here कि अगर हम सोसाइटी में इससे पहले जाएं, what we find that mortality rates tended to be high. ठीक है, mortality rates बहुत हाई हुआ करते थे. वाई द मोर्टालिटी रेट्स यूज टू बी हाई? उससे पहले जो एवरेज अगर हम देखें तो लाइफ एक्सपेक्टेंसी एट बर्थ इट यूज टू बी बिटवीन अराउंड 25 to 35 ईयर्स. ठीक है, इसके बीच में लाइफ एक्सपेक्टेंसी एट बर्थ हुआ करता लोगों का. एंड प्राइमरी रीजन वाज दैट कि हमारी जो टेक्नोलॉजी थी इट वाज एट लोअर लेवल. ठीक है, द प्राइमरी कॉज ऑफ द डेथ इट यूज टू बी several type of parasitic and infectious diseases. ठीक है, सो यू नो कि पहले के टाइम में कोलरा, प्लेग एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा इस तरह की बहुत सारी इफ यू टॉक अबाउट डिजीजेज यूज टू बी देयर. एंड व्हाट वाज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग अबाउट दीज डिजीजेज वाज दैट दे वर इन्फेक्शियस इन नेचर. दे कुड स्प्रेड टू अदर, फ्रॉम पीपल टू पीपल स्प्रेड हो सकते थे एंड इन अदर वेज ऑल्सो दे कुड स्प्रेड. ठीक है, एंड दे वर द प्राइम कॉज ऑफ डेथ. तो अगर ये प्राइम कॉजेज ऑफ डेथ एंड सच टाइप ऑफ डिजीजेस, कैन आई से द मोर्टालिटी रेट्स विल बी हाई? ऑब्वियस सी बात है, मोर्टालिटी रेट्स हाई होंगे. ठीक है, प्रॉब्लम ये था कि इस टाइम पर जब इंडस्ट्रीज का एस्टैब्लिशमेंट होने लगा, सिटीज बनने लगी, तो लोग और ज्यादा कंसेंट्रेटेड फॉर्म में रहने लगे, मोर नियर टू ईच अदर. ठीक है, एंड इफ दे स्टार्टेड टू लिव मोर नियर टू ईच अदर, does it means that the chances of spread of such diseases will be even more higher? ठीक है, it will be even more higher. In fact, you can understand कि अगर ऐसा था तो was it possible? पहले के टाइम में तो चलो, जो इससे पहले जो यूरोप का जो रिलेशनशिप था, पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमिक कंडीशन था और जो सिस्टम था, इट वॉज फ्यूडलिस्टिक. ठीक है, तो टेल मी, कैन वी से इट इज पॉसिबल कि फ्यूडलिज्म में फ्यूडल लॉर्ड कैन लिव आइसोलेटेड इन हिज पैलेस अवे फ्रॉम द पीजेंट्स, अदर पुअर पीपल, एंड ही कैन बी आइसोलेटेड फ्रॉम सच डिजीजेस. ठीक है, बट इस कंडीशन में इन इंडस्ट्रीज द सेम पीपल हैड बिकम द कैपिटलिस्ट एंड नाउ इट वॉज नॉट पॉसिबल. सो दीज टाइप ऑफ डिजीजेस वॉज ऑल्सो थ्रेट टू देयर ओन लाइफ. ठीक है, हमने अभी देखा रिसेंट टाइम्स में कि कोविड-19 में क्या हुआ, देयर आर सो मेनी डिजीजेस वी आर अनएबल टू फाइंड क्योर ऑफ देम। ठीक है, कोविड-19 आता है, इन फ्यू मंथ्स देयर इज अ वैक्सीन। ठीक है, बिकॉज अल्टीमेटली देयर वाज थ्रेट ऑफ लाइफ इवन फॉर द रिच पीपल। ठीक है, so same type of phenomena happened at that time, and ultimately what happened, there was lots of research, there was lots of development of medical science. ठीक है, there was also lots of awareness which was spread with respect to hygiene particularly. ठीक है, before you can understand, you know that अभी देखोगे तो like western countries में people use toilet paper. ठीक है, toilet paper is actually more hygienic. हमें लगता है कि it is less hygienic, but it is more hygienic because you can understand when you are using your hand, there can be several worms in your nails. ठीक है, which such problem is not there when you are using certain kind of things like paper. ठीक है, so such, if you talk about hygienic awareness was spread among the people, and this hygiene conditions along with the growth इन द फूड ग्रेन्स, बिकॉज जब टेक्नोलॉजी आया, इंडस्ट्रियल रिवोल्यूशन, उससे मशीन्स भी बनी और मशीन से क्या हुआ, फूड प्रोडक्शन में भी ग्रोथ हुआ. So there was better food security also essentially achieved. And all these things combined to make sure that what was happening in the 18th century, the death rates in the first world countries, they began to fall. ठीक है, and as the death rate falls, ठीक है, नॉर्मली हम देखेंगे कि डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन में क्या होता है, जब प्रिमिटिव सोसाइटी होती है तो डेथ रेट ऐसा होता है, बढ़ जाएगा, कम हो जाएगा, इट विल बी हाई बट इट विल बी फ्लक्चुएटिंग. वाई? बिकॉज देयर विल बी पीरियड्स लाइक, इफ यू टॉक अबाउट फेमाइंस आ जाएंगे, देयर विल बी पीरियड्स इफ यू टॉक अबाउट ऑफ सेवरल स्प्रेड ऑफ डिजीजेज आ सकता है. ठीक है, लाइक एपिडेमिक्स. So it will be always fluctuating, but and to maintain, to make sure that society remains viable, society बची रहे, फर्टिलिटी को भी हाई रखना. ठीक है, बट अल्टीमेटली व्हाट विल हैपन, अगर डेथ रेट कम होने लगा, ठीक है, फर्टिलिटी तो हाई रहेगा बिकॉज पीपल आर यूज्ड टू हैविंग मोर नंबर ऑफ चिल्ड्रन. ठीक है, सो व्हाट विल हैपन, डज इट मीन्स दैट पहले पॉपुलेशन इस तरह का था, but from here will the population begin to grow exponentially. ठीक है, so this phenomena was taking place in Europe. Malthus saw this, and जब ऐसा होगा, ठीक है, तो टेल मी, जो रूरल एरियाज से, कैन आई से more people will migrate towards cities because population explosion हो रहा है, and if population explosion is taking place, will the resource population ratio change? ठीक है, so there will be more migration taking place towards the cities where there are more economic opportunities available. क्योंकि इस टाइम पर सिटीज में क्या किया जा रहा था, there were industries established, so there were more economic opportunities available, so lots of peasants began to migrate towards cities, and Malthus could see this, the congestion which was developing, and he could see that ultimately in future, if this problem, if this pattern continues, what will happen, there will be a population crisis which will emerge. He could see a population explosion taking place in France, and he warned that if we continue like this, ultimately what will happen, nobody will be able to save us. It will be only the positive checks, बाद में देखेंगे वो checks को बोलता है positive checks, which will be able to save us. ठीक है, so can you understand the context in which the theory of Malthus was made? So what was happening during this period, urbanization, growth was simultaneously taking place. ठीक है, there was also development of better health technology and hygiene along with better food security. Along with better food security. What this led to? This led to decline in mortality rates. Decline in the mortality rates. And this decline in mortality rates it resulted in faster population growth. ठीक है. In this context, Malthus, who was a visionary, could see that the earth has limited capacity to accommodate population, limited capacity to accommodate population. Thus, such population growth would ultimately lead to population crisis. Would ultimately lead to population crisis. यही बेसिक आइडिया था माल्थस का. ठीक है. सो अगर मैं इस बेसिक आइडिया को पोर्ट्रे करूं तो व्हाट माल्थस वाज एसेंशियली टॉकिंग अबाउट वाज समथिंग लाइक दिस. That the earth has a limited carrying capacity. ठीक है. Carrying capacity of earth. You can understand Malthus can also be seen as a visionary from whose ideas the science of ecology has originated. And this is the population, exponential growth of population. ठीक है. So ultimately this is the crisis of population. ठीक है. So this is the basic idea of Malthus, and in this context he has given his ideas. एक दो चीजें हम अदर्स डायमेंशन से भी समझते हैं. माल्थस के बारे में थोड़ा सा पर्सनल हिस्ट्री के बारे में भी जानना चाहिए. माल्थस वाज एसेंशियली अ क्लर्जीमैन. ठीक है. दैट मीन्स ही वाज अ रिलीजियस पर्सन. ठीक है. सो वी विल सी हिज आइडियाज, हिज थ्योरी is very much determined by his religious views as well. For example, we will see he does not advocates use of contraceptives. ठीक है. Now, why he doesn't advocate use of contraceptives? Because he was essentially a clergyman, Christian. He was. And बाद में देखेंगे जब हम religion पढ़ेंगे तो religion दो तरीके के religion होते हैं. One type of religion is universal religion and second type of religion are regional religion. Universal religions जो होते हैं, their basic idea is to make sure that the entire earth begins follower of their faith. ठीक है. So they want to increase their followers. इसको करने के दो तरीके होते हैं. One, you convert other people to your faith. Second, you have higher population growth. Then their number of followers will keep on increasing. And thus what you will be finding in all these universal religions, you will find that the methods of birth control they were prohibited. So even in Christianity you will be finding it was prohibited. Christianity में बाद में you will be finding that the influence of Protestant cultures became very paramount, and thus other forms of Christianity, they become more liberal with respect to this culture. But originally, even in Christianity, if you talk about, there was ban on the use of artificial methods or the contraceptives to have birth control. Okay, so same thing we will see, his religious ideas have also influenced his theories. Okay, so सबसे पहले let us talk about the assumptions. देखो माल्थुसियन थ्योरी is a deductive deterministic theory. Full stop. He based his arguments on man's two basic characteristics. Essential to maintenance of life. Full stop. On these basic characteristics, he developed two assumptions which are universally accepted. So ये दो assumptions कौन से थे? First assumption लिखो, assumption 1, there will be need for food for survival. There will be need for food for survival. That means this will always be there. We'll always be able to survive if we get food. Otherwise, we'll not be able to survive. Okay, so first assumption. Second assumption, the passion between the two sexes will remain at the same level in near future. Okay, so that is basically his two assumptions, and from these two assumptions वो क्या करता है, पूरी थ्योरी को डिराइव कर रहा है. ठीक है, हमने देखा डिडक्ट करना एंड इंडक्ट करना. So what he is doing from these two universal ideas, he is deducing his theory. ठीक है, so for example, if there is need for food, हमेशा रहेगा, तो कैन आई से कि अगर पॉपुलेशन फूड से ज़्यादा हो जाए, विल देयर बी पॉपुलेशन क्राइसिस? देयर विल बी पॉपुलेशन क्राइसिस विच विल अराइज. ठीक है, इफ देयर इज पैशन बिटवीन सेक्सेस, दिस मीन्स दैट पीपल विल कीप ऑन प्रोड्यूसिंग चिल्ड्रन. ठीक है, देखेंगे ये माल्थस का एक एजम्पशन गलत एजम्पशन है, बिकॉज ही हैज मिक्स्ड टू फिनोमेना. ठीक है, पैशन बिटवीन सेक्सेस इज अ बायोलॉजिकल फिनोमेना. Having children is a social need. ठीक है, both cannot be mixed. Both are different phenomena. So उसने यहाँ पर ये गड़बड़ किया. We'll look into the criticism part of that. But that was his assumption from which it follows. So if passion between the sexes is at the same level which it was at that time, this means that people will continue to have more number of children even in the future. ठीक है, और उस समय के अगर हम लेवल्स जो टोटल फर्टिलिटी रेट्स की बात करें, दे यूज टू बी क्वाइट हाई. दे यूज टू बी अप टू लेवल ऑफ 6. ठीक है, So that means what will happen, people will continue to have more number of children, and if they continue to have this much more number of children, ultimately what will happen, the population crisis will arise. Okay, so these are the two assumptions which he has declared, but there are certain undeclared assumptions also in his idea. Okay, so certain undeclared assumptions. अगेन मैं फिर से बता रहा हूं कि इसको मैं केवल समझाने के लिए बता रहा हूं, ठीक है. These assumptions are something which are not to be written in the examination because formally they are not part of the theory. ठीक है. So if you talk about very important thing, Malthus had faith in he believed in the concept of law of marginal returns. लॉ ऑफ मार्जिनल और डिमिनिशिंग रिटर्न्स भी बोलते हैं इसको. डिमिनिशिंग रिटर्न्स, ठीक है. तो लॉ ऑफ डिमिनिशिंग रिटर्न्स बेसिकली क्या कहता है, इसका मतलब है कि सपोज अगर कहीं पर इन्वेस्टमेंट की अपॉर्चुनिटी है, ठीक है, सपोज देयर इज अ नीड, सर्टेन काइंड ऑफ नीड इन द सोसाइटी. सपोज लोगों को सोसाइटी में टेक द केस ऑफ मोबाइल फोन्स की नीड है, ठीक है. सो मैं क्या करूं, मेरे पास कैपिटल है, तो व्हाट आई डू, आई इन्वेस्ट कैपिटल इन प्रोडक्शन ऑफ द मोबाइल फोन, ठीक है. तो उससे मुझे फायदा होगा, बट मैं अगर इन्वेस्टमेंट बढ़ाता रहूं, प्रोडक्शन बढ़ता रहे, कैन आई से अल्टीमेटली सप्लाई विल बिकम ग्रेटर दैन डिमांड, and if the supply is becoming greater than demand, ultimately what will happen, the returns that I will be getting on the money which I'll be investing, they'll keep on reducing. ठीक है. So this is the law of diminishing returns. ठीक है. Taken into the context of Malthus, what he is simply trying to say, suppose there is a land, ठीक है, इस लैंड का एक प्रोडक्टिविटी लेवल है, ठीक है. इस लैंड में सपोज इवन इफ इट इज अ वेरी फर्टाइल लैंड, आई कीप ऑन पुटिंग इनपुट, सो इनपुट इन द फॉर्म ऑफ बेटर सीड्स, इनपुट इन द फॉर्म ऑफ फर्टिलाइजर्स, देयर इज अ लिमिट अप टू विच द लैंड कैन प्रोड्यूस, कैन प्रोवाइड प्रोडक्टिविटी. इफ आई यूज ग्रेटर मोर इनपुट, व्हाट विल हैपन, द प्रोडक्टिविटी कैन अल्टीमेटली इवन डिक्लाइन. कैन यू सी इवन इन सम एरियाज लाइक पंजाब एटसेट्रा, इट इज ऑलरेडी टेकिंग प्लेस, ठीक है. सो देर इज अ लिमिट ऑफ लैंड प्रोडक्टिविटी, फर्टिलिटी ऑफ द लैंड, यू कैन नॉट ब्रीच दैट लेवल ऑफ फर्टिलिटी, ठीक है. सो फ्रॉम हियर कम्स द आइडिया दैट यू कैन प्रोड्यूस लिमिटेड अमाउंट ऑफ सबसिस्टेंस और द फूड रिसोर्सेस. एंड फ्रॉम दिस ऑल्सो वन थिंग कैन बी assumed very importantly, Malthus was a religious person who had limited belief in technology, who had limited belief in technology. ठीक है. तो माल्थस थिंक नहीं कर पाया कि टेक्नोलॉजी कैन एक्चुअली रीच टू सच लेवल्स वेयर वी मे नॉट इवन नीड लैंड. कैन आई से कि आज की डेट में वी कैन प्रोड्यूस फूड थ्रू हाइड्रोपोनिक्स, एरोपोनिक्स, ठीक है. सो ही हैड वेरी लिमिटेड बिलीफ इन टेक्नोलॉजी. टेक्नोलॉजी कुछ लेवल तक फर्टिलिटी को तो बढ़ा सकता है, बट इट कैन नेवर ब्रीच दैट कैरिंग कैपेसिटी, ठीक है. सो दीज आर सर्टन फंडामेंटल बिलीफ सिस्टम्स. इनको अनडिक्लेयर्ड एजम्पशंस बोल सकते हो या फिर इनको बिलीफ systems of Malthus which have essentially defined his theory. ठीक है. Then based on these assumptions he deduces the propositions of the theory. तो जनरली अगर हम बात करें, जनरल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से व्हाट ही इज ट्राइंग टू से, क्योंकि हम देखेंगे कि उसकी जो थ्योरी का प्रपोजिशन है उसमें दो बातें, ठीक है। एक बात है जो एक तरह से वो सही बात बोल रहा है, व्हाट ही सेइंग इज करेक्ट, ठीक है। देन देयर इज अदर थिंग विच इज कोटिंग हिज आइडिया विथ टू मेक इट मोर एक्सेप्टेबल टू द पीपल, ठीक है। तो अगर मैं सपोज बोलूं कि इफ यू प्रिपेयर लाइक दिस देन यू विल गेट सिलेक्टेड, ठीक है, ये एक तरीका हो गया। फिर सोचोगे कि यार ठीक है और भी तरीके हो सकते हैं, बट इफ आई गिव स्पेसिफिक एग्जांपल कि मेरा ये स्टूडेंट था और उसने ऐसे पढ़ा और इसलिए उसका सिलेक्शन हो गया, कैन आई से इट विल हैव अ ग्रेटर इम्पैक्ट ऑन यू, ठीक है। So whenever we say something, if we can give certain kind of quantitative evidences in support of that, then our ideas will be more acceptable, ठीक है। So माल्थस ने सबसे पहले जनरल बात बोला, in general what he is trying to say, the capacity of population to grow itself is greater than the earth capacity to produce resources. That is the basic thing he is talking about. Then what he does to provide, to make it more empirical, quantitative, he also says उसको नंबर दे देता है, and he says that the population is growing by geometric progression while the resources or the subsistence is growing by arithmetic progression, ठीक है, to make it more impactful. But it doesn't mean कि what he is saying is correct. If people continue to produce at the same level at which they were producing before, there is no doubt that there would be population crisis which will emerge, ठीक है। सो फर्स्ट जनरल की बात लिखते हैं, इसमें लिखो Malthus believed, or according to Malthus, the capacity of population to reproduce itself was far greater than the capacity of the earth to provide subsistence. Full stop. More specifically, so now here we are talking about specific. More specifically, you can see population when unchecked increases in geometrical ratio while the subsistence increases only in an arithmetical ratio. Full stop. As a result, as the population grows, the gap between food supply and population will continue to grow over time. Full stop. Even though the food supply will increase, even though the food supply will increase, it would be insufficient. It would be insufficient to meet the needs of growing population. To meet the needs of growing population. ठीक है. So first very important thing what he is saying, अगर हम इसको देखें, he is saying that population grows through geometric progression and subsistence, that is means food. अर्थमेटिक प्रोग्रेशन से ग्रो करता है. ठीक है. अगर मैं इसको ग्राफ में शो करने की कोशिश करूं तो हाउ इट विल लुक लाइक. Subsistence growth and this is the population growth. Here is time and here is the growth of population and subsistence. ठीक है. So because of this type of growth, what Malthus believed that population has the capacity. लिखना चाहते हो तो लिख लो इसको. Malthus believed that population has the capacity to double itself in every 25 years. To double itself in every 25 years. ठीक है. That is basically the case of population growth. कैसे हो रहा है. In fact इसको numbers में भी दिखा सकते हो. So this is subsistence growth and this is population growth. So So there will be what? There will be much faster if you look into the population growth will be taking place compared to if you talk about subsistence. ठीक है. That is basically what? That is the population growth and the subsistence growth. So ultimately हमने फर्स्ट पॉइंट को बात कर लिया जो भी हमने देखा था. So that is, this is the population subsistence relationship. And this is the future prediction of population growth. So according to him, what was happening? Every 25 years, the population has the capacity to grow itself. So what will be the consequences of this? Consequences की बात करते हैं. consequences. Thus, with expanding population, there will be scarcity of food supply. There will be scarcity of food supply. Full stop. This will result in problems like famines and other natural calamities becoming widespread. ठीक है, so that will be the consequence. इनफैक्ट इसमें देखो consequence and solution को एक साथ लिखते हैं क्योंकि वो अलग से नहीं बता रहा. तो Malthus believed that such population resource और population subsistence word यूज करो उसके साथ हमेशा, relationship will lead to application of two types of checks on population. Two types of checks on population. तो ये दो टाइप ऑफ चेक्स कौन सा है? पहला वो बोलता है, he calls it as the positive checks. First category of checks are the positive checks. So positive checks include occurrence of hazards and disasters like famine, epidemics, pestilence, and social problems like war, vicious customs, etc. ठीक है. Overall, when there is application of positive checks, what will happen? How it will be positive check? Positive checks will lead to increase in the mortality rate. ठीक है, अभी हम उसको लिखते हैं. बस फर्स्ट हम लिखते हैं पॉजिटिव चेक्स. ये नेगेटिव जो लिखा हुआ है एक्चुअली इट इज सेकंड इज प्रिवेंटिव चेक्स. Second category of checks is calling it as the preventive checks. Preventive checks refer to methods of birth control. Full stop. Malthus was against use of artificial birth control measures like contraceptives. Full stop. He rather advocated preventive measures such as late marriage, moral restraint, chastity or abstinence. ठीक है. सो बाद में देखेंगे लेट मैरिज is useful in a way of birth control because there is something which is referred to as fecundity. ठीक है, fecundity is the ability of women to produce children. Fecundity levels are higher in young women. ठीक है, so a woman aged 16 to 24, if there is exposure to intercourse, the chances that the women will become pregnant is very high. ठीक है, as the age of women increases, fecundity levels decline. ठीक है, तो उसकी वजह से ओवरऑल फर्टिलिटी पे इफेक्ट पड़ता है. So late marriages, he's again, you can see he's talking about moral restraint, chastity, abstinence, sorry. You can see that यहाँ पर जो उसके ideas हैं preventive checks के बारे में, do they sound similar? क्या हमने इसको पढ़ा है कहीं पर? किसी और great personality के ideas से मिलता जुलता है? Can we say, does he sounds like Gandhi? His ideas were very similar to Mahatma Gandhi. ठीक है, actually many of these ideas emerged from the religion, and you know Gandhi was also essentially a religious person. So Gandhi का थोड़ा सा अलग व्यू पॉइंट था, in a way different. It was in the sense that Malthus also had a similar view कि if suppose you give people chance of artificial way of birth control, ठीक है, what will essentially happen? People will stop working hard. ठीक है, most of the people work hard for their children, ठीक है, for their family. If they can have all the enjoyments of life without having family, ultimately they would not want to work hard. ठीक है, that was the basic idea of Gandhi, why he was against the use of contraceptive and was more in favor of use of such methods like moral restraints, etc. ठीक है, so thus he talked about two classes of checks which will be applicable in case of such population growth. ठीक है, आगे लिखो, change the paragraph and write in the same. Despite these two suggestions, Malthusian ideas remained highly pessimistic. Or deterministic. Full stop. He wrote, agar if you want to write in quotes, you can write in quotes. Despite the application of preventive checks, comma, there wouldn't arise a scenario where positive checks would not apply in more or less regular fashion. Regular fashions. So you can unquote. So what is the meaning of this statement? In simple words, he is trying to say that preventive checks will never be so much effective that they will be able to control the population. Ultimately, there will be application of the positive checks. Okay, so लिख लो. In other words, he had less belief in the efficacy of preventive checks to control population. So stop. Thus, the population could only be checked by application of could only be checked by the application of positive checks. ठीक है, so this is the population theory which was provided by Malthus. ठीक है, so उसके solutions भी कैसे हैं, बहुत pessimistic हैं. The solutions are essentially that ultimately positive checks will be able to control it, जैसे कि nature में होता है. Like for example, you might have seen कि हम ecology में keystone species की बात करते हैं. Like for example, take the case of tiger. Tiger is a keystone species. So if you kill the carnivores, what will happen? The population of the herbivores will rise to so much level that it would breach the carrying capacity of that particular ecosystem. And ultimately what will happen? There will be lots of problems, food problems, diseases, etc., which will prevail. And ultimately what will be the case? Vegetation will also reduce. The animals, the herbivores, they would also begin to die. Mortality rates would increase. Their population would reduce. Okay, so that was the same idea which Malthus was using here, that there is a carrying capacity. जैसे ही हम breach करते हैं carrying capacity को, some natural laws are there which will apply. These natural laws will apply in the form of positive checks, and they will lead to reduction of population. In the end, he essentially meant was that future, if the population continues to grow in this fashion, the future was filled with misery. Okay, the future was very bleak. So that was the population theory of Malthus. So we'll stop for today. We'll continue this tomorrow, and we'll talk about the critical analysis, and we'll see where the theory of Malthus fits in with the perspective from today, contemporary times के हिसाब से. ठीक है, again all those who are watching, please like, subscribe and praise the teacher.